NATO continues to help Ukraine defend itself. This includes Germany.
Yes, well, that's really great news. So a lot of pledges have come in, and I hope I can make a few announcements later today. Pledges made today. And when you look at the overall numbers, as I said yesterday, we are now at 4 billion. So that means we are really on track for the 1 billion a month, August, September, October, November. And I'm cautiously optimistic that we will reach the 5 billion for the full year. And then for next year, we need for the full year, again, a lot of money, at least 1 billion, maybe even a little bit more than 1 billion a month. It might be around 50, maybe a little bit more for the whole year. When it comes to this crucial US gear.
They did it again. Another headline, another billion. NATO allies announced new money for weapons to Ukraine, air defense, artillery, and ammunition. All coordinated in Brussels. All framed as defending Europe from so-called Russian aggression. Ukraine is not in NATO. It has no Article 5 guarantee, no mutual defense treaty, no flag in the council chamber. Yet it is getting the kind of military support many formal allies can only dream of. So the obvious question is the one almost no leader will answer plainly on camera. Why is a military alliance built on an attack on one is an attack on all, pouring weapons into a country that is, officially, not one of the one? And what does that really mean for small states caught between big blocs? To understand that, we have to rewind. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Ukraine woke up as an independent state with Soviet tanks on its soil, Soviet nuclear weapons on its territory, and a Soviet-era army. It's a discussion for another day. It also found itself sitting between a shrinking Russian alliance and an expanding Western alliance. In the 1990s, the story was cooperation with the West. Ukraine joined NATO's Partnership for Peace in 1994 and signed a special charter on a distinctive partnership in 1997. The idea was, you're not quite a member, not quite neutral, but something in between. NATO ran joint exercises, training, and advisory missions. Kyiv sent troops to NATO missions in the Balkans and Iraq. On paper, everyone spoke the language of partnership. Then came the Bucharest summit in 2008. NATO leaders issued a single fateful sentence on Ukraine and Georgia. They will become members of NATO one day. No date, no plan, no guarantee, just a promise. Moscow read that line as a red flag. Kyiv read it as a distant ticket to security that never quite materialized. In 2014, the illusion shattered. After Western-supported protests in Kyiv toppled a pro-Russian government, Russian forces seized and annexed Crimea and helped ignite war in eastern Ukraine. NATO condemned it as an illegal annexation and a breach of international law. From that moment, the relationship changed. The alliance set up trust funds and a comprehensive assistance package to modernize Ukraine's command, cyber defense, logistics, and wounded soldier rehab, non-lethal support, but clearly aimed at building a military that could work with NATO standards. Then 2022 arrived. Russia launched a full-scale war based on 2 points. 1. Moscow's support for the separatist People's Republics in eastern Ukraine, Donetsk and Luhansk. 2. The assertion that Ukraine posed a direct threat to their security by its strong NATO alliance shift. Tanks rolled toward Kyiv. Missiles hit cities across the country. Millions fled. NATO's 2022 strategic concept, its guiding document, locked in a new doctrine. Russia was now the most significant and direct threat to Allies' security and to peace and stability in the Euro-Atlantic area. From that moment, Ukraine was no longer just a partner. It became the front line of NATO's entire Russia strategy. Yet still, no membership. Instead, the alliance improvised a hybrid model. On the one hand, NATO as an institution does not send tanks or missiles. The treaty framework is careful. NATO itself provides non-lethal aid, coordination, and training. On the other hand, almost all 32 allies, plus partners like Sweden before it joined, send weapons bilaterally, meet as a Ukraine Defense Contact Group, and use NATO planning cells to decide who sends what and when. By 2025, this patchwork had hardened into structure. A new financing mechanism, the Prioritized Ukraine Requirements List, or PURL, allowed European and other allies to pool money to buy, mostly US, weapons for Ukraine, air defenses, drones, artillery systems, ammunition. You see headlines like, Allies pledge over $1 billion more for US, weapons for Ukraine, and they're not exaggerating. The money doesn't come from NATO's central budget. It comes from national treasuries, but the orchestration is unmistakably NATO. At the very same time, Ukraine is still outside the formal club. Why? Officially, NATO's line is simple. The alliance has an open-door policy under Article 10. Any European democracy that meets the standards, contributes to security, and is unanimously invited can join. Ukraine has been told repeatedly that its future lies in the Euro-Atlantic family. Summits end with phrases like, Ukraine's rightful place is in NATO, and, when conditions allow, the conditions never seem to fully arrive. Privately, leaders give 3 reasons. First, no one wants to bring a country already at war with Russia into a mutual defense pact. That would turn a regional war into an automatic NATO-Russia war overnight. Does this mean that NATO is avoiding a war with Russia? Let your guess be your response. Secondly, several big members, especially earlier in the conflict, feared that a fast-track invitation would provoke escalation, cyber attacks, energy cutoffs, or worse. Oh, really? How central is self-interest considered here? Third, internal politics. Some governments worry about Ukraine's corruption record, rule of law reforms, and the precedent of admitting a state with unresolved borders. Really? Still, Ukraine is effectively supported as though it were a member. So the compromise looks like this. No Article 5. No formal membership. But weapons, training, intelligence, and long-term assistance at a scale that feels, in practice, like a de facto military partnership. That's the official story. NATO supports Ukraine's right to self-defense, wants to see a just peace, and insists that helping Ukraine now prevents a wider war later. It says Ukraine is not a proxy, but a partner whose fight is in Europe's own security interest. Now let's switch lenses. Because if you strip away the communiques and look at the structure, something deeper appears. Ukraine is the front line of NATO's Russia strategy, without being inside NATO. That is not an accident. It is a design. From NATO's perspective, Ukraine serves 3 functions at once. First, it's a buffer. If Russian forces are bogged down east of the Dnipro, they are not testing the borders of Poland, Romania, or the Baltic states. In blunt strategic terms, every Russian tank destroyed in Ukraine is one that will never roll toward a NATO town. That sounds cold, but that's how planners think. Second, Ukraine is a proving ground. New Western systems, drones, artillery, air defenses, electronic warfare are being tested in real conditions against a near-peer adversary. Tactics are being updated in real time. Defense industries on both sides of the Atlantic are learning more here, in 1 year of high-intensity war, than they did in 2 decades of counterinsurgency. Some Western analysts openly describe Ukraine as a laboratory for modern warfare. Thirdly, Ukraine is a signal. It tells every state on NATO's periphery, if you align with us, you won't be abandoned. Even if we don't bring you fully inside the treaty, we will arm you, train you, and integrate your forces into our systems. For governments from Tbilisi to Chisinau, that message matters. But there is a cost to this model, and almost all of it is paid in Ukrainian lives and Ukrainian cities. From Moscow's perspective, this is exactly what it has warned about since the 1990s. NATO's military footprint creeping closer, not necessarily through bases and flags, but through weapons, trainers, and networks. The Kremlin uses that to justify its war. We are fighting NATO expansion. That fact rubbishes the simple claim that Ukraine remains a sovereign state, though its neighbor. It also taps into a real grievance. The security architecture of post-Cold War Europe was built with NATO as the central pillar, not with Russia as an equal partner. From Kiev's perspective, the picture is more tragic. Ukraine is told it is defending European security, the international order, even democracy itself. But when it asks for the one thing that actually guarantees its survival, a binding treaty that says, an attack on you is an attack on us, the answer is always, later, not yet, followed by conditions, reforms, after the war. It is invited to the battlefield. It is not invited fully into the club. From a global South perspective, this looks very familiar. A Western alliance framing a war on the edge of its sphere as a moral crusade, pouring in weapons but stopping short of sharing formal risk, while the frontline country pays in blood. Many in Africa, Asia, and Latin America look at Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, and now Ukraine and see a pattern. Western security concerns are always urgent. Western memory of others' sacrifices, including the 27 million Soviet dead in World War II, is often selective and short. None of this is considered as an excuse to Russia's claims. Instead, Russia is accused of launching an unprovoked full-scale war, annexing territory, and targeting civilians, an act which violates every principle Moscow itself signed onto. But if we ignore the structure of the NATO-Ukraine relationship, we miss the bigger transformation. The alliance is quietly building a model for future confrontation with major powers that stops just short of formal war, using armed partners instead of treaty allies. For small states trapped between blocs, that is both an opportunity and a warning. Opportunity, because it means you can get weapons, training, and political backing without formally joining. Warning, because it also means your country can become the chosen arena for someone else's security agenda without ever giving you a real veto. So when you see the next headline, NATO pledges another $1 billion in weapons, new air defense package, multi-year assistance plan, it helps to translate the language. Support for a non-member means we will arm you like you're in the club without fully bringing you inside. Long-term partnership means we want your battlefield to double as our buffer and our test lab. Open door, when conditions allow, means we're not yet willing to bind our own security legally to yours, but we're willing to bind your fate to our strategy. Here's the Liberation Lens takeaway. The question, why is NATO arming a non-member, has a simple surface answer: to help Ukraine defend itself against what it calls aggression. That answer is true, but beneath it lies a harder truth. The line between ally, proxy, and buffer is being blurred in real time. And the new front line of European security is a country that still stands outside the formal protection system it is dying to join. If you're watching from a small state caught between powers, this is the lesson. No one's narrative is neutral. Not Moscow's, not Washington's, not Brussels. What matters is the ledger. Who signs the treaties, who signs the checks, and who signs the death certificates. If this helped you see past the speeches and into the structure, you know what to do. Subscribe, share, and stay with us. This is Liberation Lens. And in a world where even support can turn you into someone else's shield, perspective has never mattered more.